Every truth hides a darker secret.
In the winter of 1970, a woman was found burned beyond recognition in a Norwegian valley known as Death Valley. No name. No country. 6 fake passports. And traces of radiation on her clothes. She was everywhere. And from nowhere. This is not a ghost story. This is the Cold War's most perfect mystery. The Isdal woman. November 29, 1970. Bergen, Norway. The air was cold enough to burn the skin. A light snow was falling across the Isdalen Valley, a place hikers called the Valley of Death, because of the suicides that had happened there years before. That morning, a man and his 2 daughters were walking through the woods when they saw something lying among the blackened rocks. At first, they thought it was an animal. Then they saw the hair. Then the smell. It was a woman. Her body half burned. Her hands raised as if to shield herself from the fire. The snow around her was melted into glassy puddles. There was no tent, no sleeping bag. No signs of a campfire. Only a strange, controlled burn when the police arrived. They found the strangest scene they had ever witnessed. Near the body lay several objects. A few plastic bottles. A broken umbrella. A small silver spoon engraved with a pattern that no one could trace. But the most chilling detail was that all identifying marks had been removed. The labels had been cut off her clothes. The numbers on her belongings scratched away. Even the fingerprints had been burned beyond recognition. Whoever she was, she did not want the world to know her name. At first, the police thought it was suicide. Then they opened her suitcase. Inside, 2 wigs, multiple sets of clothes, and 6 passports. All from different countries. All fake. Each told a different story. Belgium. Germany. The Netherlands. Names that existed nowhere in any official record. And in the lining of one suitcase, they found a coded note. A series of letters and numbers, later interpreted as a record of travel dates. Trains, hotels, cities. She had moved across Europe like a shadow. Always alone. Always silent. The autopsy revealed traces of sleeping pills and gasoline in her body. She had died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Likely from the fire. But the burns were so severe that the police couldn't even estimate the exact moment of death. There was no family, no friends, no missing person who fit her description. No one came forward. It was as if the woman had never existed. The investigators gave her a name, Isdalskvinnen. The Isdal woman. They buried her in an unmarked grave, placing only a small cross above the soil. But the mystery didn't stay buried. Because the deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. Her trail stretched across 5 countries. Her aliases crossed spy networks and Cold War embassies. And every person who saw her described the same thing. A woman who looked ordinary and completely out of place. She was nobody. One investigator later said. And that made her unforgettable. The police began their investigation by following her belongings and discovered that her life was built like a puzzle meant to mislead. Among her effects were 2 suitcases found at the Bergen railway station. Each contained fragments of another life. Stylish clothes from Italy and France. A bottle of expensive perfume. Rubber boots for hiking. And wigs, brown and black, both trimmed in the same careful style. Inside, they found a coded note, written in tiny block letters and numbers. It looked like gibberish at first. 23 PTM 28 PMTL 29 PB. Later, investigators realized it matched dates and train stations. A travel log, written as if for someone else to read, her trail led to at least 9 hotels across Norway. In each one, she checked in under a different name and nationality. She told some she was Belgian, others she was German. and once French. Always elegant, always polite, and always alone. At one hotel she signed as Genevieve Lancier. At another, Claudia Tealt. Sometimes she claimed to be a traveling antiques dealer. Other times, a fashion buyer. No one ever saw her with luggage heavy enough for either job. Witnesses described her with uncanny precision. Tall, slim, about 35. Dark hair, green eyes. An accent that sounded European but from nowhere specific. A kind of trained neutrality. She wore expensive clothes. But her shoes were practical, built for movement. She spoke rarely. And when she did, she seemed to measure every word. One receptionist remembered her perfume. A strange, sharp scent, like something chemical. Another said, she looked like someone who was always watching the room. Even when she smiled, her eyes stayed somewhere else. Her journey began weeks before she died. Oslo, Stavanger, Trondheim, Bergen. Always near harbors. Always near train stations. Always for a few days at a time. She paid in cash. Used no credit. And never left fingerprints. Her last check-in was at the Hotel Horderheimen. Under the name of Elizabeth Lienhau. She asked for a small room. No maid service. The maid remembered her most clearly. She sat on the bed for hours, staring out the window. She ate little. Once, I saw her speaking with a man in the hallway. Tall, with dark hair, wearing a grey suit. That man was never identified. Days later, the staff found her room empty. Her key left neatly on the desk. Sheets folded. Nothing out of place. But in the trash can, a burned match. And a scrap of paper with one word half visible. Finn? Some thought it might refer to Finnegan, a code name. Others, to a Norwegian location called Finnafjord. No connection was ever proven. Back in Bergen, police traced her to a shop, where she bought a pair of rubber boots and a bottle of petrol. The same kind used to start fires in cold mountain air. The clerk said she seemed nervous but deliberate. When he asked if she needed help carrying the canister, she refused. "I can manage," she said, and smiled. It was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. The case grew stranger when tests revealed tiny traces of radiation on her personal items, on her clothes, and a small handheld object resembling a camera lens. To most, it meant nothing. To others, it screamed Cold War espionage. The early 1970s were thick with spies. Soviet agents, NATO operatives, secret messengers. Norway's coast was dotted with radar stations, monitoring submarine activity in the North Atlantic. Some began to wonder, was the Isdal woman a courier? A scientist? A spy caught in the wrong place? Or was she something stranger? Someone who had erased herself on purpose. The Bergen police asked Interpol for help. Replies came from Belgium, France, West Germany. Each one the same. No match. No missing person. No record. It was as though her entire existence was an act of performance. And her death, the final scene years later, one witness would say, "She looked like she was on the run. But I never knew from what." And another? She was afraid of someone. Or maybe of herself. Whatever the truth, by the time the snow melted in the Isdalen Valley, her trail had gone cold. All that remained were questions. And a single photograph of a burned woman whose face no one could name when the Isdal woman was buried in February 1971. The case file was marked closed, unsolved. Her coffin was sealed. Her grave unmarked. A quiet end to a mystery that refused to stay quiet. But in the years that followed, her story began to drift through Europe. Like smoke from a fire that never quite went out. In 1971, Norwegian journalists pressed the police for answers. They had none. So they began their own investigation. What they found deepened the mystery. Her coded travel notes matched military testing zones in western Norway, places where NATO radar experiments were conducted. One hotel she stayed at was only a few kilometers from a restricted facility used to track Soviet submarines. A coincidence, perhaps, or not. Then came the radiation. Experts from the Norwegian Defense Research Institute confirmed that her clothing carried minute traces of isotopes commonly found in decontamination suits, the kind used by technicians exposed to nuclear material. That was enough to ignite the imagination of an entire continent. Some said she was a Soviet spy, monitoring NATO operations. Others, a double agent, caught between two intelligence services. A few whispered something darker. A scientist testing chemical agents. Silenced when she became a liability. But no country ever claimed her. No agency ever admitted to losing her. It was as though she belonged to no one. In 1979, a retired police inspector reopened the case unofficially. He traced every passport, every alias. All 6 were linked to real people who didn't exist. False identities made with precision and consistency. The handwriting on each hotel card was the same. Neat, deliberate, slightly right-slanted. As if copied from a template. She wasn't improvising. She was following instructions. Witnesses from several cities remembered seeing her with a foreign man, tall, clean-cut, who spoke German or Dutch. He always kept a distance. Never touched her. Never smiled. In Stavanger, a shopkeeper swore he saw her arguing in German with 2 men in suits. Moments later, they left in opposite directions. No one ever found them for decades. The Isdal woman haunted Norway as a kind of ghost story from the Cold War. A riddle wrapped in silence. Every few years, someone would rediscover her, and the same question would return. Who was she running from? By the 1990s, most of the original investigators had died. Her grave remained untouched. Then came a new era. The era of DNA. In 2016, Norwegian police reopened the case with forensic scientists from across Europe. They exhumed her body and extracted a small fragment of bone from the skull. From it, they built a genetic profile. The first real evidence in 45 years. The analysis revealed something remarkable. She was of Southern European origin. Most likely from around Germany, France, or northern Italy. Her teeth contained trace elements that matched nuclear testing sites and laboratories. In the late 1950s and 60s. It meant she had lived or worked around radiation at some point. And then, another shock. Her DNA showed she had no close relatives in Scandinavia. No family claimed her. No database matched. In 2018, police released digital reconstructions of her face. Millions saw her. The sharp cheekbones, the calm eyes. The expression that seemed almost alive. Within days, hundreds of people came forward saying they had seen her before. A waitress in Brussels. A neighbor in Milan. A woman on a ferry to Denmark. All of them remembered her. None could prove it. Half a century later, the Isdal woman remains unidentified. Her DNA sits in European databases, waiting for a match that may never come. The coded note, the radiation, the fire, all pieces of a puzzle whose center is missing. But perhaps the answer is simpler than we think. Maybe she wasn't a spy, or a fugitive, or a scientist. Maybe she was just someone who wanted to disappear, and found the only way to do it was to become a mystery. She is still out there, one investigator said in 2018. Not in body, but in every question we ask about who we are when no one is watching. The Isdal woman A ghost from an age of secrets. A story carved into the silence of a cold mountain valley.